In the back of beyond lies a shimmering wilderness, where even the stones seem to burn. It's been called the Never Never, the dead heart of Australia. Three-quarters of the continent is arid now, but once this vast interior was a place of plentiful rain, with rivers flowing into great lakes. Even today, huge rains occasionally transform the arid lands into a semblance of that wetter past. In these deep valleys, runoff from the infrequent rains filters through the rock long after the surrounding country has dried out again, and the water preserves stands of ancient palms. Permanent pools teem with fish. They are now able to cope with wild swings in water temperature and salinity, and they breed into vast shoals when the heavy rains flush them out into the desert rivers. That happens perhaps only a few times each century now. Most of the time, the rivers are dry, and yet they're far from dead. For deep within their sandy beds, there's moisture left behind by the last rains. It's these hidden waters which support a rich mosaic of life through even the driest times. Millions of years of erosion carved deep and wide through the shields of rock. Pillars of harder stone remained, while the rest of the plateau wore away to form the deserts of central Australia. Ancient floods scattered the eroded rock into plains of stone, the Gibber Deserts. Their bright sheen, a film of iron oxide left by evaporated moisture. It seems that nothing could grow here amid this wilderness of rock. Yet, amazingly, there's life. The shingleback lizard seems a pattern of stone until it moves. There aren't many places to hide, and camouflage is a good defense. Reptiles manage well here, for they can do without regular food or water. While there isn't enough to support many mammals or birds, the gibber bird does thrive here. There are sufficient insects to supply all its needs, including the little moisture it requires. It escapes the worst of the blistering heat in what shade there is, holding the wings out to keep air circulating close to its body. The fierce winds that came with the last great drying of Australia 20,000 years ago sifted the sand from the gibber and swept it into vast dunes. Row upon row of dunes arc halfway around the continent, some running without a break for 300 kilometers. The sand seems a meager basis for life, yet life there is. Its presence is written in the sand. A moving ripple announces a most intriguing and secretive creature, the marsupial mole. The mole spends much of its life swimming through sand. Its sturdy little claws are shaped like shovels. Eyes would be useless beneath the surface, and they've all but disappeared. Instead, it relies on touch and smell to find its subterranean meals of grubs. But not all that ripples is a mole. Some lizards have also become sand swimmers. Several skinks have gradually lost their legs, the easier to slip through the shifting granules and sneak up on insects. But this grasshopper's come up with a defense. Already patterned like sand, it completes the vanishing act with a flurry of shoveling legs. In the swales between the dunes, a crust of clay and sand has formed, and in the years between rains, it lies sun-baked and cracked. These miniature canyons are home to Australia's tiniest marsupials, the planigales. They weigh as little as 6 grams, and their heads are flattened to squeeze through the narrow spaces in search of insects. But small mammals also make attractive prey for the desert snakes. At moments like this, the cracks offer protection against more than the desert sun. Reptiles are the major predators in these parts, and the most formidable of them all is the parenti, a giant goanna, 2 meters long. Much of its prey hides from the sun, but the forked tongue picks up even the faintest traces of scent. The snake is extremely venomous. Bashing it breaks the back and leaves it helpless. A meal this size can last parentis a month or more. Storing food in layers of fat enables them to thrive in this unpredictable region. The desert dunes overlie and rechannel ancient river courses that once drained into a huge inland lake. What shimmers now is salt, left by thousands of years of evaporation. Today, Lake Eyre is the driest place on the continent and among the hottest. It lies 15 meters below sea level, and temperatures can soar to a scorching 60 degrees. Yet even at this harsh extreme, some animals flourish. Lake Eyre dragons survey their salty domain. their eyelids shaped like sun visors against the blinding glare. They feed on ants, which harvest insects blown onto the salt. The ant mounds also serve as lookouts to spot potential mates or rivals. To avoid actual battle, the dragons have evolved a most eloquent body language. Head bobs, push-ups and arm waves sort out the hierarchy and signal readiness for mating or reluctance. This male's proved his dominance. Now he can feed undisturbed, walking on the heels so as to keep toes from getting burnt. The dragons manage to thrive in conditions that would defeat most other creatures. And most of the time, their domain remains undisturbed. But a few times each century, Lake Eyre becomes a sea again. Most of central Australia drains into Lake Eyre. Usually runoff from light rains evaporates long before it reaches the lake. But occasionally, a tropical cyclone dumps huge rains across the remote Channel country. It's these unpredictable heavy drenchings that are the crucial events in the life of the arid country. Water falls in such abundance that it soaks deep into the parched earth and replenishes the hidden stores which keep the plants and animals going when the dry times return. The downpour is a welcome chance for the desert animals to drink their fill, and for these galahs to wash the dust out of their feathers. In this region of little and erratic rain, the survivors are those who, like this spiny-tailed gecko, make the most of every opportunity. Normally, it emerges only at night. A praying mantis sips the droplets that gather on its arms. The thorny devil drinks in a most ingenious fashion. The sculpting of the scales creates fine channels which draw the water to the corners of the mouth. The rain is heavy enough to sink deep into the sand. A meter or so down, it wakens a most surprising animal to find in the desert, a frog. Yet frogs live here in abundance, for they cope with drought in a remarkable way. They escape underground for years, cocooned in a second skin to keep their body moist. That shroud provides the first meal when the kiss of water ends a sleep that may have lasted 5 years. Then comes a brief but glorious spell of freedom, feeding and breeding until the returning dry sends the frogs back into their time capsule. The desert plants have their own ways of making the most of the rain. Many mulgas are shaped like inverted umbrellas. The rain is funneled down the leaves and branches, then cascades down the trunk. The water soaks in around the base of the tree and recharges the underground stores. The cracked clay between the sand dunes soon becomes saturated and forces the planigale to seek higher ground. There's been so much rain here in the Channel Country that the runoff races hundreds of kilometers down the dry creek beds towards the arid heart. The waters replenish the subterranean reservoirs, carrying the benefits of the rains a long way from where they actually fell. Once again, masses of water are surging towards Lake Eyre. So suddenly did the rivers rise that they caught this gecko unawares. It's a marvelous transformation, from bone-dry sand to water churning with fish. They bred from stocks in isolated waterholes flushed out by the rains. These cormorants are among the legions of water birds which follow the newly flowing rivers into the flooding desert. The rivers carry so much water, they flood out across plains that are among the flattest on Earth. The warmth of the sun and the wealth of fresh nutrients brings everything to life. Dragonflies and insects of all kinds are in a frenzy to reproduce, to make the most of the good times while they last. The touch of water stirs dormant eggs into The budgerigars know the rain will produce a flush of food, and they gather in trees lining the flooded rivers to form pairs and start families. These nomadic little birds are well tuned to the shifting fortunes of the interior. They mature quickly, and the males produce sperm when they're only a few months old. The flooded rivers become flyways for ever more invasions from the continent's wetter margins. Long lines of water birds follow the shining trails deep into the heart. The wave of life reaches its crest in Lake Eyre, transformed again into a mighty inland sea. Water now stands meters deep, where the dragons perform their courtly dance. They've fled to the shores, and the lake belongs to the birds. Close to shore, redneck avocets sweep through the mud for brine shrimps. Further out, pelicans flock together to round up the teeming fish. The floods have turned the salty desert into a vast bowl of rich soup that supports breeding colonies of enormous size. Just in this one place alone, 15,000 pelicans gather to breed. In their regular habitats, pelicans and gulls breed only once a year. But here they'll keep producing clutches till the food runs out. There are broods at all stages of growth, from naked hatchlings to young pelicans ready to take wing. With no predators to worry them, the gravest threat comes from the relentless heat. Inevitably, some will perish. But for a time, Lake Eyre offers what counts most, an abundance of food. Elsewhere, the rains have painted the desert with glorious colour. These are the ephemeral, short-lived desert plants. They sit out the dry years in time capsules, dormant seeds which only rain can unlock. Like this Sturt's desert pea, their flowering will be brief, and in their urgent need to attract pollinators, they provide copious nectar. The plants set great quantities of seed, so there'll be enough to last till the next rains. The flowers vanish as swiftly as they bloomed. Their abundant seeds will feed many creatures for a long time to come. Most of the desert animals come out only in the cool of the night. Avoiding the daytime heat is one way these hopping mice have made themselves at home in the sandy desert. They also get their moisture from seeds, and they've evolved a speedy hop to escape their The hopping mice almost vanish in the dry years, but plentiful food stimulates them to multiply rapidly. They're very social creatures. As many as 10 live together, and their communal burrows are marvels of design. As well as a main entrance, there are several escape holes, and the main living area is a metre or so down to avoid the extremes of hot and cold. Young are born about 4 weeks after mating, and part of the burrow becomes a nursery. There are usually 4 in a litter, and mothers suckling one brood may already be pregnant with another to reproduce even more quickly in this time of plenty. Long after the rains, the water that's soaked into the sands sustains the arid region's most characteristic plant. Spinifex is a uniquely Australian grass and covers 1/3 of the interior. This grasshopper mimics the foliage, one of many creatures thriving within the spiky ramparts. Deep taproots reach the moisture meters down, and surface roots seek what few nutrients the soil has to offer. As a result, Spinifex grows outwards in ever-widening rings. In some places, the tussocks are linked by these intriguing tunnel-like structures. The runways are built by ants, using grains of sand, glued together with drops of Spinifex resin. The covered trails shield the ants from sun and predators on the way to their food supply in the Spinifex. The ants protect the source of that food with more sand and resin shelters. Within them, minute sap-sucking insects are at work. And this is the purpose of the ants' striving. Sugary drops that are the waste product of the insects feeding on the Spinifex sap. Together, these tiny droplets provide all the energy needed to drive an entire ant colony. Using some of that energy to build runways is a wise precaution. Ants without that protection may fall victim to the thorny devil. On higher ground, there's sufficient vegetation to support one of Australia's creative artists, the western bowerbird. It shapes stalks of grass into an elegant bower and decorates them with desert fruits and berries. The calls lure a female to the bower. Its sole purpose is to impress her, and to serve as the arena for the male's seductive display of song and dance. When evening comes and the sands cool, the pace of life among the spinifex quickens. Scorpions and other creatures that have spent the day shielded from the sun come out to hunt. There's much food about, but also danger from other hunters. The stripe-faced dunnart, a ferocious marsupial carnivore, tackles almost anything, even a venomous centipede. Dunnarts belong to an ancient marsupial group. Although females do have a pouch, it's too small to hold 6 growing young for long, and some occasionally lose their grip. Hanging on to mother is vitally important, for dunnarts are always moving their home range to keep up with the shifting supplies of insect food. There's no advantage for dunnarts in having a regular nest or burrow. But for this little creature, a permanent home makes much sense. The pebble mound mouse has reliable food of seeds and tubers nearby, and making a shelter from heat and enemies is well worth even this prodigious labor. Some of the stones are bigger than itself. The stones are piled in a circle around the entrance. On dewy nights, they collect moisture to drink. The arid landscapes are a patchwork made by millions of years of shifting and leaching soils, from sands to stony ground. Some retain more of the recent rains, some less. The variations shape an astonishing diversity of life. The mulga is the characteristic desert tree. In favored places, it produces a nectar that's promoted an extraordinary animal response. The nectar flows from small leaf glands, and the ants it attracts keep leaf eaters away. Many ants come to feed on this mulga honey, but because the flow varies considerably, certain species have evolved an ingenious way of storing it. In these unusual colonies, a special caste never leaves the nest, but serves as living stores, their bellies hugely distended into translucent honey pots. Nursing ants only digest a little themselves and feed the rest to the larvae in their care. These busy insects are the most numerous inhabitants of the arid lands. About half of Australia's 5,000 species of ants live here. Through some remarkable interactions with the plant world, ants play a major part in shaping the environment, carrying vast amounts of plant material and turning over the desert's meager stores of nutrients. But ants also exploit seeds. and so short-lived plants produce huge quantities. Some at least will escape the columns of foragers. Some of the permanent plants actually turn the ants' appetite to their advantage. Desert trees won't thrive too close together in these poor soils, so the seeds need to be dispersed. Birds sometimes help by distributing seeds in their droppings, but not these galahs. What they eat, they digest. The remainder drops close to the trees. Were they to sprout here, they would compete with their parent for nutrients and moisture. So ants have been enticed to carry them away. The seeds themselves are ant-proof, but they're packaged with an attractive food, oil-rich bodies called oliosomes. In the underground chambers, nurses and other workers labor together to remove the oliosomes and distribute the food to the rest of the colony. The seeds are just waste and dumped on a rubbish heap in a distant gallery, there to await the germinating touch of the next rains. Some trees use the wind to get their seeds away. Dispersing seeds gives the saplings more space to grow extensive roots and make the most of the little moisture in these soils. While the desert rivers have long stopped flowing, masses of water run deep within the sandy beds, enough to sustain the mighty river redgums. All that's left on the surface is a chain of pools, and most of those will vanish soon. But the moisture flowing in the hidden rivers supports generous stands of the river reds through even the driest times. Clouds of corellas roost in the gums on their travels around the interior, following the movable feast of seeds and fruits. It's not hard to think of these antics as pure play, a means of whiling away the long hours between feeds. Come breeding time in late winter, the flocks break up and the corella couples start looking for nesting hollows. In this season of plenty, every suitable hollow is soon occupied. This pink cockatoo already has chicks in the nest. It approaches cautiously so as not to alert predators. The parents take it in turn to feed their youngsters. There's still an abundance of seeds and fruits to collect, and the birds make many trips a day to pump the mash into the ever-beckoning young beaks. The chicks are now a fortnight old. In another month, they'll be strong enough to follow their parents and fly. Cockatoos are hardy and resilient birds, well designed to cope with the rigors of arid life. But they can't do without water. This deeper pool will remain filled well into the dry times, and it becomes the focus for much of the animal life of the surrounding plains. Red kangaroos can go without water for months while there's fresh growth, but when that's gone, they need to come in for a drink once or twice a week. Those other large plains dwellers, the emus, need water nearly every day once it gets really hot. With so many kangaroos crowding together, tussles often break out among rival bucks. When night falls, the cockatoos find resting places in the trees nearby, and the big reds start moving back to their home ranges to feed in the cool of the night. Grasses that grew tall in the wake of the rains have dried out, and the green pick that the kangaroos need for moisture is harder to find. The rising sun swiftly sends the temperature soaring to 40 degrees, and the kangaroos move to what meager shade they can find. Such large and warm-blooded animals should have real problems in this kind of heat. Yet the kangaroos cope remarkably well. One way they keep cool is to lick parts of their body where the blood vessels run close to the surface. Through the heat of the day, start to run out, and the big reds have to move on or perish. The awkward shuffle of their feeding gait shifts into an effortless fluid bounce. The energy of each hop is stored in the hind leg tendons, like a spring, to provide the propulsive force for the next. For those that leave too late, the end is inevitable. The diminishing resources simply won't sustain the numbers that flourished in the time of plenty. It won't be long before the mud in this pool is baked hard again. For a time, the great die-off provides a feast for the hunters and scavengers of the arid country. Soaring on wings spanning 2.5 meters, the mighty wedge-tailed eagle, Australia's largest bird of prey, scans the drying country for dead and dying animals. Eagles feed on carrion as well as live prey. But even carrion is becoming scarce, and hunger drives the birds into fierce competition for the little food that remains. After it began to fill, Lake Eyre, the great sea at the heart of the continent, has dried to salt again. Rows of dead fish mark the receding shores. The legions of birds that flourished here have vanished, the last of their broods abandoned. These cormorant chicks had the misfortune to be at the end of the line when the food ran out. Nothing can save them, or the pelican broods. But though the images speak of death, they belie the fact that this so-called dead heart can also be a place of extraordinary fertility. Even while the flood of life that came with the rains ebbs away, the underlying pulse continues to beat strongly, and the permanent inhabitants reappear. The Lake Eyre dragons are coming back now that the country is returning to its normal state of drought. Lack of food left the last of the pelican flights without the strength to make their escape. The winds suck away the last traces of moisture and leave the plains bone dry. But deep beneath the waves of sand and dust, the hidden aquifers still run, the lifeblood that keeps the arid heart beating. Even on the salt beds of Lake Eyre, seemingly so dead, life continues to proclaim its vigorous existence. The Lake Eyre dragons have reclaimed their dominion. The males reassert their dominance with inflated impressions of their size. Soon the hierarchy will be sorted out. Each dragon will have its place in which to feed and breed, to live and die. The challenge in the arid center is not so much lack of rain as its unpredictability. Over millions of years, plants and animals came to meet that challenge in remarkable ways. More than 50,000 years ago, man set foot on the continent for the first time, and his response to its challenge changed dramatically and forever the nature of Australia.